Hello and welcome to Face to Face. Our guest today is Kevin Neish. Kevin lives in Victoria, and many of you will have seen his name in the paper recently, perhaps on television, on the radio, because Kevin was part of the latest attempt to break the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. This is being filmed in just almost at the end of July. And Kevin, maybe you can just run through the time frame of what happened and what happened.
What happened? Well, this is the second flotilla, Freedom Flotilla 2. As you remember, last flotilla was a nightmare on the Mavi Marmara, where all those people were murdered and death and destruction and whatnot.
Well, you know, a lot of people probably don't remember. Maybe you can just, it
would have been May 31st, 2010. There was a flotilla of ships from all over the world. I think there was 9 ships in total that were trying to get to Gaza. What happened was the Israeli military attacked the flotilla, and in particular the ship I was on, the Mavi Marmara, the Turkish ferry, with about 570 people on board. The Israelis landed commandos and opened fire, and in the end, nine Turkish aid workers were murdered, I'd say. I mean, be fairly blunt about it. And about 54 were wounded in gunfire, and many more were broken bones and various wounds and whatnot. And I was in jail for two days in Beersheba prison in Israel after they captured the ship. And then we eventually got deported. I got deported to Turkey, but anyways, it finally got home. But yeah, that was last year's flotilla. This was a follow-up flotilla, and I was originally going to be on the Mavi Marmara again, but the Mavi Marmara ended up that she couldn't pass her safety inspections because of the damage that the Israelis had done to the ship, to the engines, to the communications, navigation, the ship in general, so it couldn't sail. So I flew to Istanbul thinking I was sailing on that ship, and when I arrived there, I was told it wasn't going.
Now, this was quite recently.
Oh, this
is the second flotilla now.
Second flotilla. This happened at the end of June. And I was, let me think, I flew out of here on the 15th, and I believe the ship was due to sail around the 23rd, 24th, I believe.
So that's 1 month ago from when this is being filmed, at the end of July.
Yeah, so anyways, when the Mavi Marmara was pulled out of the flotilla, I was left without a ride to Gaza. But fortunately, the Canadian boat to Gaza, which I've been fundraising for all year, they raised, almost $400,000 right across the country. I spoke 25 times from Yellowknife to Halifax to Nanaimo and everywhere in between, raising money for the Canadian boat to Gaza. And I wasn't expecting to go on it because I had been invited to go on the Mavi Marmara. But what happened was when they found out, the leadership of the ship, the Canadian boat to Gaza, when they heard I'd been left off the flotilla, they invited me to join them. So I hopped on a plane and flew down to Crete. It was a secret back then. I wasn't supposed to tell anybody where I was going. Hush, hush. And so I ended up joining them in Crete and going through their nonviolent resistance training. And with about 32 Canadians, 4 Belgians, 4 Danes, who else was in there? A German, Australian, 4 Australians, New Zealander.
Now, this was the Canadian boat to Gaza.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I mean, maybe I did know, but it's, I barely knew, if at all, that there was
I'm not surprised you don't know.
To Gaza.
I'm not surprised you don't know, because it got very little coverage. The only coverage you got was when the National Post attacked us, and that was about the limit of it. We got very little coverage. We were called a ship of fools by the right-wing media, and in general, they just ignored us, or they tried to ignore us, is what they did. But so it's quite a credit for an organization that was basically ignored for a year. We raised $400,000 and drew thousands of people to events right across the country to hear about the original flotilla and this new flotilla. So it.
I'm just going to, I often talk about the media, and here is another example of the way it operates. And I'm talking about the Times Colonist here locally, the CFAX, A Channel, Czech TV, the National Post, the Globe and Mail.
Did you mention CBC there? Or
CBC, yes, CBC. This is how they operate. When there are things they don't want you to know about, such as a ship of Canadians going to Gaza to break what many believe is an illegal blockade, they don't tell you about it, and it's kept completely secret. And even if you're not interested in this issue, the problem is they do it on every important issue. This is the role of the media, to keep us uninformed so we do not know what is going on, so that the people who do run this country can continue to run it.
You have to wonder how many issues out there that we, even us, informed activists, us, I got to wonder how many issues out there that we don't hear about, period.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't know about the Gaza, heavens to Murgatroyd, there, and you're in the loop.
Semi in the loop, at least.
Semi in the loop, but anyways, it. We did pull it off. They got the boat, and like I say, we made linkages with several other countries. Like I say, the Danes, the Australians, the Belgians. They didn't have enough money to put their own ships in, so they threw the lot in with us. And so we took about 4 each of their activists, and we had a CBC Radio Canada from Quebec film crew on board, or on during the training. And we had a reporter from Pravda, and we had a Press TV film crew. We had a reporter from Germany, a Danish reporter. We had, I think, about 10 different media on the ship. But again, here in Canada, we were pretty, other than the Quebec CBC, they did a good job reporting. If it wasn't for them, nobody in Canada would have heard anything about us. But
how many ships were in this flotilla?
There was going to be, I believe, up to 13. I believe is what the total would have been. But but then in the end, only one ship got through. One French ship called the Dignity.
I didn't even know a ship got through.
Well, one ship didn't get through to Gaza. The success was that it got through to be arrested by the Israelis. All our other ships were locked down in Greek ports. And what happened was there was, I think, at least 9 ships of the flotilla from all over the world, Ireland, Indonesia, Greece, Sweden, Norway, United States, and the Canadian ship were all in Greek ports, waiting to leave and join up in mass and then go into try to get to Gaza. But because of the Greek financial crisis, the Greek government was dictated to as to they were told that you can't let the flotilla ships leave your ports, which is, when you think of it, unheard of. 9 ships flagged from all over the world simply passing through Greece, all completely inspected, all completely legal, all simply in transit through Greece on their way to somewhere else. And the Greek authorities, it's quite obvious. I mean, the Israeli government thanked Greece for doing this openly in the media. The Greek government locked us all down in response to what the Israelis wanted and what the Americans wanted.
Yeah, I'd say, you'd have to say that the power behind this had to be the United States of America.
Yeah.
That's where the power is, or at least the corporate power within the United States of America.
Yeah, they did.
But this must be totally illegal.
Well, it should be, but by the time you go to court and fight it, it's, I know like our ship was flagged in the Comoros Islands, basically a flag of convenience. It was done that way because it was cheaper, it was faster, and my opinion is it was wise to do that, because if we had flagged it in Canada, then the Minister of Transport could have pulled our license, could have messed us around. So I think it was wise that we were flagged in the Comoros Islands. But who's ever heard of the Comoros Islands? And yet, one of our biggest offenders in this fight to get out of Greece was the Comoros Islands, because they were outraged that one of their legally flagged ships was not allowed to leave a port for basically no reason. The Greeks simply said, well, it was a crazy dance, a game of charades. We were in the port of St. Nicholas in Crete, in Greece, and all set to leave. We had got our training done. There was 50 of us there, all getting the training from all over the world, and Quebecois and Canadians, and we're all wrapping up the training, and we're still trying to get the approval to leave. We had all the inspections, we had all the paperwork, everything was done. We had paid all the fees. We had spent thousands of dollars getting the ship properly licensed and inspected, and yet the Greek authorities they simply played silly bugger with us. They wanted the inspections redone, so they sent the Greek police force onto our ship to redo the internationally recognized inspections that were already approved, and yet they sent their policeman. What does a policeman know? But he was there simply to slow us down. And then they didn't like our water tanks. Then they wanted they didn't believe that an official from the Comoros Islands had actually signed a piece of paper, so they had to send it away to the Comoros Islands and have the thing recertified. They wanted the original captain's certificate for the captain of our ship, the Greek captain.
Now, this is never done.
Well, this is never done. It was like a comedy. I mean, I felt sorry for the Greek authorities because it was obvious they were uncomfortable, but they were simply following orders. It was a very nice woman who was the Greek harbor master in St. Nicholas, and she, you can see she was embarrassed. Many Greek people were embarrassed, and they were coming down to apologize to us, just average citizens, because they knew what was up. And they were saying, we're ashamed of our government, we're ashamed that we don't have our own foreign policy, but there's nothing we can do because of this financial crisis. They had been, basically they had been told what to do, and they were going to do it. And I mean, the final straw was the owner of the ship, a Jewish Canadian woman by the name of Sandra Rush. She was, again, at the harbor master's office, just supplying another piece of paper to her to try and get their approval. They'd ask for something, we'd supply it, ask for something else. Finally, the Greek harbor master says, well, I don't think the benches on your ship are wide enough to be approved. I'm sure there's a regulation, and she actually pulled a book off the shelf, flopped it down, and was pawing through the book, looking for the regulation looking for any regulation regarding the width of benches, because she said they weren't wide enough. And it's legal. You use benches to sleep on a ship. And she felt that there must be some regulation because our benches were too narrow. It just got down to comedy.
So you weren't allowed out, but in the end, I seem to remember reading or hearing or seeing that the ship was actually damaged.
We did get out. We got a little ways out. What happened was, like I said, there was 9 ships who were trying desperately to get out of Greece and couldn't get away. Finally, the Greek Minister of Public Safety issued an edict just saying that no ship from Greece shall travel to Gaza. It just there's no logic, no rhyme, no reason to it. He just decided to send this edict out, and so we immediately submitted new travel plans, saying that we're going to go to Alexandria in Egypt. It didn't matter. They simply ignored that and made up more excuses. And so finally, the Americans actually belled the cat, and they got fed up. This would have been in late June, and they simply sailed away. They tried to sail regardless of getting Port Authority permission, and the Greek Coast Guard captured them, towed them back, arrested their captain, and seized their ship. And then immediately after that, all the ships in Greece, all of our flotilla ships, they weren't seized, but they were surrounded or closely watched by the Coast Guard and commandos from the Greek elite commando forces, the army, whatever. And so after the Americans were captured, we then had the Greek Coast Guard ship tied up right behind us, at right angles behind us, on the end of a pier, and they had a squad of commandos sitting in lawn chairs at the guard shack about 200, 300 feet away from us at the end of the pier on the land side, and all because of us, just watching us. And And because of the edict that the Greek government issued, our Greek crew, captain, engineer, deckhands, they wouldn't, they couldn't sail with us because they would have lost their livelihood immediately. They would have been stripped of their credentials, and so they had to step aside, which left us with no crew. And I guess the Greeks thought, well, that's the end of that. And the Israelis too, the Greeks were surrogates for the Israelis, basically doing their bidding. They thought they had us, but we did a poll of the crew member or the people on board the ship, see what we had in the way of a new crew, and it turned out we had 2 retired ship captains and a retired bosun. Actually, not retired. They had their papers. And me with my marine engineer papers. I was the only marine engineer. So we then had a crew of I won't say what positions they were, but there was a Danish fellow, a Belgian fellow, a German fellow, and myself. We were the new crew for the ship. The Tahrir is the name of the ship, named after Tahrir Square in Egypt. So we had a new crew, a volunteer crew, and but then we had to get out of the harbor. Because the Greeks had this cruise or the ship lined up right behind us, ready to cut us off. And the reason people have chastised us for breaking Greek law and trying to escape Greek waters and all this, but the issue was for us was that 2 of our ships in Greek ports had been sabotaged by the Israelis. They had sent underwater diving teams in. Elite commandos, Navy SEALs with special breathing apparatus and underwater cutting equipment. And they had sabotaged the propellers and propeller shafts of 2 of the ships. And 2 days before we made a run for it, a ship turned up in the harbor. They asked permission to tie up right behind us as it happened, and it was an Israeli ship full of officers. It was a huge 3-deck luxury yacht. It was called the Noah 7, N-O-A, in Greek numeral 7. You look it up on the web. It's quite a beautiful ship, full of Israelis flying the Israeli flag, and it was no doubt to us what they were there for. They were there to do us dirt, and we felt the Greeks couldn't protect us. They wouldn't let us leave. We were going to be there like sitting ducks, waiting for the Israelis to sabotage our ship as well. And we had around-the-clock surveillance on our ship. All the delegates. The 50 of us, we broke up into groups, and all night long we stayed awake at 4-hour shifts around the ship watching. And the last night, they actually had me rig up underwater lights. So we had the whole bottom of our ship lit up, like the undersea gardens, and had a diver in the water most of the night, watching under the ship because they were expecting us to be attacked at any moment. And again, that's why we had to make a run for it, because we either sat there like a sitting duck or we got out of there. So like I say, we got a volunteer crew together, and they had a demonstration to try and distract the guards, the commandos at the gate. And while the commandos were watching the demonstration and watching some people march around with banners and whatnot, the volunteer crew and all the delegates were on board. They quietly let the lines go and shore power and whatnot. And this is when the kayaktivists came into it, which is actually a credit to the people here in Victoria, because this ship, the Coast Guard ship, would only have to pull ahead about 20 feet and cut us right off. We wouldn't been able to leave. They'd simply pull ahead and sit behind us, and we'd be cut off, and that'd be the end of it. We'd have, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So when the leadership was discussing, this break for freedom that we're going to be making, and everybody knew we were going to try it. Everybody knew there was no secret about it. Just a matter of when we did it. I said to them, I have experience as a marine engineer, and I know that unpowered ships have right-of-way over powered ships. Because I knew this, because we actually hemmed in the Coho ferry during the first Iraq War as a protest, and we hemmed in the Coho ferry, an American flagged ship, with kayaks and canoes and sailboats for part of a day as a demonstration against the Iraq War. This would have been back in the mid-90s, I think. So I mentioned this to the leadership of the Canadian boat, the Gaza, Tahrir, and I said, well, rent a couple of kayaks. It's a tourist town. I'm sure there's kayaks to rent. And rent a couple of kayaks and put the kayaks at the critical moment in front of the Coast Guard boat, and maybe that'll let us enough time and room to get away. And so they took my suggestion, and they got 2 kayaks, and they got an Australian fellow and 1 Canadian to volunteer to get in the kayaks. And as we let the lines go, and I got the signal, I was in the engine room, I got the signal to fire up the engines. I hit the switches and fired up the big Cat engines. I've spent my career working on Cat engines, as it happened, so it was like old home week for me. And the engines roared to life. The commandos came. I wasn't up on deck, but the commandos came rushing down the dock, and they were all piling onto the Coast Guard boat, and the crew was firing up the engine. They're all set to pull ahead to cut us off, and here's 2 kayaks sitting off their bow, and they can't move. They got quite enraged. They were kicking and pulling and trying to reach down and grab these 2 kayaks, and the kayakers were pretending not to understand Greek. And it gave us just enough time to back up right in front of them, turn and pull out of the harbor, and they gave us a 4-minute head start until they could actually maneuver around and get away from these kayaktivists. A new term in activist language. And then it was a horse race. I gave them full power on both the engines, and the captain, he headed for open water, and we just had to get 12 miles. So we had to leave the port and get 12 miles out, and then we would have handed things back over to the Greek crew, which would have met us in international waters at the 12-mile mark. And so we didn't make it, though. The Coast Guard ship, quite a large ship, it was as big as us, but fiberglass, quite a bit faster. It came roaring after us and tried to spray water at us from its firefighting equipment, and they tried to cut us off, and they couldn't. It was nothing compared to the Israelis. These folks weren't as brutal or as dangerous as the Israelis, but they were acting for the Israelis. And we thought we had made it because they couldn't actually get people on our ship. They couldn't get close enough. They had to keep a safe distance from us, and we wouldn't stop. And we thought we had made it, but there was a Zodiac along with them, and they loaded up a Zodiac with commandos, and the commandos jumped on board our ship, couldn't avoid the Zodiac. And they pushed and shoved and knocked a bunch of the activists down and stepped over them and got to the bridge, which by then had been emptied. And the big Greek, the dangerous fellow, we were warned about this fellow. He was the one waving a pistol in the air. This Greek commando chief, older fellow with sunglasses, he demanded and stuck his head out of the bridge and demanded, says, "Who's captain?" Because of course then they threw the captain in jail, and he might still be in jail in Greece if they could find him. But it was like a Hollywood movie. All the activists on the bow of the ship, 30 or 40 of them, all shouted in unison, "We're the captain!" So it was like something from that Spartacus movie, I Am Spartacus. So they didn't know who was captain. They couldn't arrest any captain. So the commando, he took over the bridge and dutifully tried to turn the ship around and give her full power to take her back to Crete. But as a final gesture, when I saw the engine slow down, I knew immediately that the bridge had been taken, and I moved up from the engine room and saw the soldiers running around our ship. So I went to the back of the ship and spoke to the leadership and said, "Well, would it be of any use if I disabled the engines and I shut the engines down? It's still our ship. You're still owners of the ship. You're still, it's your ship. What do you want me to do?" And they said, "Yes, shut down the engines." So I went down and had somebody watch, because you don't want to be shutting down things at the wrong time or dangerous maneuvers. But we were well out of the way of everything, and I went down and there was a tug of war for a while between me and the commando on the bridge. He'd put it full forward, I'd pull it back to neutral. He'd pull it full forward, I'd pull it back to neutral. And in the end, I shut all the engines down, so we had no power, and they were just floating around. It was a moot point, but it was just to make the point that we weren't going to give up easily. We'd gone all this way, and we got 8 miles. We almost made 12 miles, but we didn't quite get 12 miles out. We got 8 miles, and
So
And it was a long story.
Yeah, why don't you, we're almost out of time, but why don't you finish off by telling us what you were trying to do and why?
Well, we're trying to break the siege of Gaza. Since 2007, the Israelis have had I shouldn't call it a siege, it's a blockade, because a siege is a military term. It's an illegal blockade. Remember, Israel trumpeted the fact that they were leaving Gaza, that they're getting out of Gaza, and the world thought, well, Gaza is free now. Well, anything but. They moved out of Gaza, they locked down the borders, they made the Egyptians lock up their border at Rafah, and they won't allow airplanes in, they won't allow ships in. So it's.
But their border is controlled.
Yeah.
The entire border.
Yeah,
so
all
how
the
do
way
they
around.
get everything, food, everything they need?
Has to come through Israel.
Comes through Israel.
And it's not supplied by Israel. People have this strange idea that Israel's being wonderful by giving aid to Gaza. Israel, my understanding is they give nothing to Gaza. All they do is that they allow aid in that the Gazans buy or that the aid organizations buy and bring in. And they actually charge for bringing it through because it has to be transshipped and moved from trucks to trucks to trucks, and the Israelis charge all the way along. So
for food, medical supplies, clothes, everything, cosmetics,
everything, you name it. Well, everything, absolutely everything, and a lot of things aren't allowed in. Construction materials. At one point before the last flotilla, there was a list of 100 things that were allowed into Gaza. You think of a shopping center, it would have thousands of items in it. And they were allowed, it changed day to day, but about 100 items were allowed in. It's just, it's madness.
So the reason for this flotilla and the last one, and really the efforts of people around the world, because there's lots and lots of people trying to do lots and lots of different things to get into Gaza. You just never hear about it, folks, because our corporate media, the Canadian media, won't tell you about it. But you were trying to break this blockade from the sea, and once the blockade is broken, the hope is that it will be broken and there will be free transit of material.
Free transit, and it'll be a step towards peace.
Just like any other country has the absolute right to, or any other place.
Any other place, you would think. My take on it is that 40, 50 years of violence and military options hasn't solved anything in Israel, Palestine, and we're trying a peaceful option. My take was that if the Gazans are able to trade and able to communicate openly with the rest of the world, they won't have any reason to attack Israel, or certainly less reason to attack Israel. They can't get anything in. That's why they're lashing out. And hopefully if the borders opened up, they won't lash out. That they'll be treated. It's just like you say. It's common sense. The Gazans have a border with Canada, honestly, because they have an international border with the sea. So they should, a ship from Canada should be able to sail through international waters all the way from Canada right to Gaza. It's a border we have with them. Why can't we use it? Why can't we send aid there? Let alone aid. We're not talking about charity cases. It's a matter of allowing them to survive. They can make products. They can sell products. They can get out of the country and work, go to school. They can actually do things then if the borders were open. But the borders aren't open.
That's it. Thank you for watching Face to Face.